Hi, my name is Peter. This is the Peter on Health channel. This video is called The American Holy Trinity. And before you think I'm blessed, let me explain the picture on the thing. So um, the idea here is um, Musk is the media owner. Tucker is a media person, and he does interviews, and obviously Trump, as the political leader. And it's my belief that in this election, in the next 30 days, um, the country is like hanging on its fingers, by its nails, and these three men, um, basically, like, people were trying to assassinate Trump. If they do that to Musk, I think America's over. I think the next important, I think, is Trump and then Tucker. But I think Trump can be, replaced by Vance, and I mean, he'd be like a Jesus figure if they actually kill him. And this idea of like the people and the working people, like, would, be really taking over the country then that way, And so I feel like, I'd be really sad, if they do it, but I think it might even work more that way with that, And then Tucker, if he just suddenly has a heart attack, Joe Rogan and other, interview, people who do podcasts and all that, they could step in and honor Tucker, just like, what's that, Hezbollah in Lebanon, they took out the top guy and all the guys behind them, but then, people replaced them, and that have the same, beliefs in whatever. If you don't like them, whatever. But the point is, the organization didn't go, and it might even um, was even stronger. But Musk, as the media owner, why I put him in the Holy Spirit is because if they take that guy out, First Amendment is dead. It's dead. Because Twitter is the only place online where you can post your beliefs, videos, other things that go against the board, on Ukraine, on the war going around the Middle East, on COVID, on surgeries to kids, on anything that goes against the prevailing, climate change, whatever. Like, if you don't buy, the propaganda on those topics, you can post them on Twitter and you won't be canceled. That's not true for Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And so Twitter is kind of the last place. And there are people like who say, hey, Musk is a plant, Musk is a, like really, like, researchers who say, oh, he's connected to deep state and blah, 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 blah. And I just say, like, on all those topics I listed, I can find people on Twitter with millions of followers, posting stuff multiple times a day, going against the prevailing propaganda from the New York Times and CBS and MSNBC on those topics, and really persuasive stuff. And I'm just saying, if Musk was a deep state plant, he'd have gotten rid of those people. He wouldn't have brought them back on Twitter. So that's what I'm saying, is like they take him out, Twitter goes back to just like all the other crappy social media, like this one I'm posting on, where I can't really say the name of the country in the Middle East or anything bad about them. And so this is what this this is like what I read about with soldiers. The guy who wrote in the Soviet time, Gulag Archipelago, and you have your own language. It's like Jimmy Dore talking about the jabs, and he would call it the, he wouldn't say the word V, he would say, just so that, the sensors, the automatic AI sensor wouldn't pull it. But Twitter, you can just use whatever words you want, and so that's why I'm saying Musk is so important, because without free speech, everything falls away. All the rest of the Bill of Rights, right? First Amendment, speech, what I'm doing now. Second Amendment, wear a gun, carry a gun. Third Amendment, I can't remember, like the next few are like criminal type things. The government can't come into your house without a warrant, and you can get a lawyer, you can have a jury, all this stuff in our system is about protecting the individual against the excess of the government. And so, the fact that I believe this, right, and I call these guys the Holy Trinity. And let me just say something about me and religion, right? Because it's possible, somebody got on here and is religious, and here I am using a religious term, the Holy Trinity. I forgot the name of it. I had to ask my wife again, what's that thing about God and Jesus and the Spirit? What do you call those guys? And she's like, a Holy Trinity. Oh, yeah, okay. I was born to a very religious woman, Greek woman. So spoke Greek to me, took me to Greek church, as a young kid. For some reason, it never stuck in me. And I went through life as an atheist, just not believing in any of that fairy tale stuff. But as I got older, and older and older and older, I became agnostic, because I realized atheism is a religion itself. You can't prove that God does not exist, just like the God believers can't prove God exists. You know what I mean? I'm in this nebulous world. So I became more open to hearing religious reasons for the same thing I came. And the time of that was Covidland, where I'm unjabbed, and I'd get on Substack and I'd read the comments, and it just seemed like 90% of the commenters were religious and gave a religious reason for their whatever. And I just said, I spent my life looking down on religious people as dummies. And I realized at that point in my life that not only were the religious people not dummies, they were the best people in the world. And they saw through the bullshit, just like I saw through the bullshit of the propaganda, right? And so I developed a greater affinity for religious people. Even though I'm not religious, maybe religion helped them see the bullshit. Whereas part of the reason that spurred this video is an email I sent last night to a friend, and I'm going to read it. This is the part of it I'm going to read it. But the point is, let me tell you about this friend. I'm 61. I moved to the United States in 1988 to go to Stanford Law School. So I was 25 at that time. I'm 61 now. That means I've been in America for longer than I was in Canada. I moved from Canada. I will say also, as a Canadian, I'm liberal like everybody there. I was anti-gun. I liked diversity. Um, what else is liberal? Anti-war, pro-Medicare for all. We didn't even call it that in Canada. We just had health insurance. My daughter just went to school in Toronto, and she's a Canadian citizen because I got her citizenship, but she's not quite, counted as that yet there. So she's treated in the school in Toronto as a foreigner. So she has to pay extra for health insurance. So guess what she paid for the whole year, covering dental, vision, and health, like all health care. $750 for the year. And that's expensive in Canada, right? The locals pay like just about nothing. And she's already had a few appointments and whatever. Like, it's just this propaganda we get in the United States about public health care. So anyway, I moved here and I was like anti-gun, pro-health care, all that stuff. I should pull out my Bernie sweatshirt. Like in 2019, I supported Bernie. I voted for Obama twice. I was your classic liberal. And then what happened is COVID came along, and I was the only one among my overeducated friends, out of Stanford and Silicon Valley, who said, F no to the jabs. It's fucking nuts. Why would I want to put poison in my body? Like an experimental gene therapy, right? Like, I just said no. And all my friends were like, what's wrong with you? Like, what are you, conspiracy theories? Like, blah, 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 blah. And that's when, like, I can't unsee what I saw during the COVID time. I can't unsee the Democrats, the party. I went to law school. I tell my friends who listen, I went to Stanford Law School. I took con law. And I learned the following thing about the First Amendment. Congress shall not, whatever, like, tell you what to say or what not to say. Fuck that. That, which is like canonical American, that First Amendment in the Constitution was not upheld in America until the early 1950s. Country was almost 200 years old. And every time some effer got up on a soapbox and said, I hate the government, they're just screwing us, that guy was arrested and charged with espionage, whatever, like, you know what I mean? And it would go to the Supreme Court, and they said, 9-0, 7-2. I think it was 7-2 in 1918. Eugene Debs, who was a socialist, got up on a soapbox and said, hey, the capitalists are killing us, blah, blah, blah. They arrest him, charge him with espionage, goes up to the Supreme Court, and I think it was 7-2. Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the dissent saying, there's this thing called the First Amendment here, and it seems to protect stuff like Debs was saying. He wasn't calling for violence. He was stating his beliefs that capitalism results in more poverty, and maybe socialism will be better for the people, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, he was just giving some beliefs about society and organizing it, right? Not calling for arms, not calling for anything like that. And yet they put him in jail. And the Supreme Court agreed. It wasn't until the early 1950s with the Warren Court, which was a liberal, left-wing, Democrat-supported court. There was a guy who was in Portland on a soapbox calling for a communist revolution at the height of the McCarthy era, the communist witch hunt. The Republicans, the right-wingers, wanted this guy hung in the village square. But the Democratic Warren Court said, no, this guy is not calling for violence. He's a right to First Amendment. And every First Amendment case from that first one pushed forward was pushed by the Democratic Party, by the left wing. The anti-war movement in the 60s was left wing, was Democrat. So free speech, anti-war, the women's movement, the black movement, the gay movement, all left wing, all Democrat pushed. Why wouldn't you want to be Democrat? You want more freedom, you want more openness, you want the First Amendment to apply. And then what happens over COVID? Anti-free speech, censorship, Democrats, pro-war, Ukraine war, Middle East war, right? And so, me supporting Bernie, I'm like one of the Democrats whose head spun like I'm in The Exorcist. And I'm like, what happened to my party? But that, that's whatever. Parties change, parties do whatever. It was my friends who stayed there. I just blew my effing loving mind. Okay, so let me read this mail I sent to my friend last night, which inspired this video. We have a hike every Wednesday morning, and we talk sports, health, whatever. Now he's Jewish. We've had a little bit of talk about the wars over there. He's got a very moderate, opinion of it. I mean, he's very pro stuff going on with the one country, but he'd like to see a two-state solution, and moderate. I'd call him moderate that way. He's not a guy in the street protesting against it. I mean, he's also not like a super fan of the extremist leadership there, but he's a moderate. So that's what he is, and I can't disagree with that. That's my view of it. I'd love to see a two-state solution over there, everybody living in happiness and peace. But we don't talk about it a little bit just because, it's a sensitive thing for him. So we were talking sports, health, business, and then, a little bit of politics, right? Because it's kind of an interesting political season. But I think what's been happening is we're less than 30 days from the election, and it certainly seems like the other side, the Democratic Party that I'll never vote for the rest of my life, I hope they go the way of the Whigs, I think they know they're losing, and they're pulling out all the stops. And so supporters of them, like my friend I hiked with, I think are starting to get a bit antsy, realizing that. So let me read the mail I sent, and you'll see what I think is going on. I said, pretty amazing that you see me as a very smart guy who somehow fell into a web of conspiracy theories based on no evidence whatsoever, and that I see you as a very smart guy who is somehow acting like a Stepford wife, repeating obviously false propaganda comprising not even a shred of truth whatsoever. What's even more amazing is that with two people harboring these ideas, neither is punching the other in the face. Instead, we're just asking each other questions with a bewildered expression. Now, here's the key paragraph. What I believe is underlying this division is a core belief within each of us that if the other party wins, this might just be the end of America as we've known and loved it over the past 60 plus years. Easy to talk politics with the person on the same side. Amazing that we're on the opposite side, yet still sort of cordial, albeit strained. And I meant that, because he's the only one on that side. I can even have even a mild, cordial, albeit a bit strained and bewildered conversation. But isn't that amazing that their talking point, that if they were to see that picture, you know, and I'm calling them the American Holy Trinity. First of all, they're anti-religious, and they're definitely anti those people. My friend, that friend, and I got to tell you how good a friend this guy is. I moved in 1988 to go to law school. In my small section was a little brown woman who became a dear friend of mine. She finished 4th in our class, graduated after 3 years, right at law school, 4th. She was the most brilliant woman I've ever met in my life. And not only that, the type of her brilliance I've only ever seen in a woman. And it was one that I just couldn't grok. I couldn't understand. What I'm saying is, like, I finished like 17th, I think, or well, I was top 10%, but I was at the bottom of the 10% of the 180 kids in the class. She was like 4th. And like, she just was, I remember studying with her, and she'd always finish quicker and she'd score better. Finish and score better, and finish and score better. And I'd be like, what are you doing, man? Like, how are you able to do that? And she tried to explain it to me, but it was like, I don't know, talking to somebody in Swahili, and I don't speak Swahili, right? Anyway, that was my dear friend. She died of breast cancer shortly after we graduated. It was so tragic. But her husband was this friend of mine who I just sent that mail to last night. So we've been friends for a long, long time. And if that was the only touchstone of our friendship, that would be a deep friend I've known now since 1988. And there's even a deeper touchstone. He introduced me to my wife, my second wife, like, who I'm still married to, that I met in 2000 because he introduced me to her. She was a paralegal working for him, and he introduced us, and we had a kid, and we're still together. So I have a deep, deep, abiding respect for this guy, and love of this guy, and appreciation for this guy. And yet, I believe that. And he thinks that, like, Tucker? And I said, hey, did you see the Tucker interview of, I can't remember who it was. And he said, oh, I wouldn't touch Tucker with a 30-foot pole. I wouldn't listen to anything that fucktard has to say. I was like taken aback. I'm like, Tucker's just like a nice guy who interviews people. Yeah, he has his opinions that you might not like, but you know, like you know, in terms of an interviewer, he's wonderful in his access. Look at this picture. He's interviewing Putin. My friend says about Putin, he's basically Hitler who wants to take over the rest of Europe. I've heard him say it on video himself. He just wants the old Soviet Union to come back, and you know, yeah. Look, I've never met Putin. I've never met him. But you can watch people on YouTube, I was saying to them, like, you know, explaining what the Russians are doing, and look at the map of what they've taken over and not, and it seems pretty clear that the areas of Ukraine they've taken over are Russian speaking, and the locals there are happy they're there. I said, what, you know, if they go into Western Ukraine where they're not ethnic Russians, they're ethnic Ukrainians, they're going to have a hell of a time. And they're going to have a guerrilla war to fight. And I don't think they want to fight that. They learned that in Chechnya. And they don't want to have that again. And so I just think this idea that they're going to roll into Poland or Czechoslovakia or whatever and have to subdue the locals who hate the Russians, I don't know. I don't know, but I doubt it. I highly doubt it in the modern world. Right? So, but no, he firmly believes it. And that's why it's existential for the West that we stop Putin at, you know, Ukraine. And, yeah, so anyway, like, yeah, I'm at a point now. I'm at a point where I think we're like right before the U.S. Civil War. Let's say everybody was religious, okay? and everybody went to church on Sundays, and it just was the way that life was. And the people in the South, pro-slavery, believe that God had ordained that there's white people and then the black people are subservient. And, you could be religious, you could be really good to your slaves, you could feed them and not beat them and just treat them like children and family. Some people did that. There was other people who were clearly psychopaths and malevolently beat them. But the point was, you could have a genuine religious belief that what was going on in the South was according to God's plan. And in the North, the abolitionists, who were religious too, said that slavery was an abomination of God. You were spitting on God, by thinking you could own another human being. And, my sensibility growing up all the way through today, I line up with the people in the North. I might not call it God, but I just call it humanity. I just don't believe in that. I'm a First Amendment believer, not just for me, but for you. And you and you and you and you and everybody. Even the F-tards like the Dems and, my dear, dear friend who just spouting propaganda. You got a right to do that. Don't tell me I don't have a right, though, to call bullshit on it. But that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. And that's what's frightening to me. We're living in a time when, Hillary Clinton and John Kerry video went around of them, and Kamala all said the same thing. They want to have government regulation over social media. And if you allow on social media, Tucker allows, like I said, people doing the countervailing ideas on these topics that I said at the beginning of the video, they're going to put him in jail and they're going to shut down Twitter. Just so we can keep disinformation, misinformation, malinformation. And these friends that I have, this one, a dear friend, and another guy I wrote the foreword to his book, who's not a lawyer. I'm a lawyer, my other friend's a lawyer, and the fact that we have polar opposite beliefs about the legality of what's going on, it reminds me of reading about the Civil War, where you could have lawyers, but they're religious and they believe their own God, version of God, is on their side. And, I just think, I honestly think at the end of the day, and I wrote this, 20 years ago when I said there was going to be a people versus corporations. And it really turned out to be that, although I will say I think the war is people, the American people versus world government, the WEF. All this stuff, the reason the WEF hates Americans is everything I'm saying. That my number one issue is the First Amendment. Let all of us speak, let there be a marketplace of ideas, and let the best ones win out. I don't want some expert remote in Brussels or Washington, D.C. or somewhere else being the expert, the Fauci type expert, deciding what's true and what's false. I don't want to live in that kind of a world. I want to live in a world where, the wisdom of the crowds. The wisdom of the crowds comes out. And that wisdom of the crowds is antithetical to Kamala, Hillary, Obama, Kerry, all these poobahs of the Democratic Party. And so I'm saying, we're sort of at a quote-unquote civil war, but I just don't think it's going to be a fighting one. I don't think there's going to be a gun battles. There's no clean line like the Mason-Dixon line, a geographical line of it. I will say I'm in California, and as another thing that inspired me to do this video is this interview. I'll leave the link in the description. Carlson interviewed Tucker, so you know this guy interviewed that guy. That guy just was at the second Butler rally with that guy, and Tucker and Trump have met before. So and what Elon was saying was like California is lost. It's like 2/3 Democrat. People just punch it in. You'll vote for a banana. Like, and you look at the Kamala. Like even my friend I wrote that mail to that I read to you agrees that she's dumber than George Bush, Sarah Palin, who was that vice president, that guy that was with Bush. I mean, there have been some pretty like airheady people in government, and this one, like, holy crap. But it doesn't bother him. Anyway, stay healthy, my friends.